but I turned over in my bed to grab the extra blanket near my feet. But my eyes met this old, skinny guy just standing there in the corner of my room, staring at me with these bloodshot eyes. I was totally shaken. I tried to muster up some words, anything at all, but nothing came out. I was 13 at the time, and we lived in this one-story house with a daylight basement. The basement had an exterior door, which honestly we never even used, maybe once or twice a year. The neighborhood was pretty chill, especially on a quiet dead-end street like ours. Plus, we had neighbors nearby, so being home alone didn't feel too sketchy. It was Friday night, and my parents headed out for date night around 6 p.m. I locked the door behind them and sat on the couch and began looking for a scary movie to watch. It probably took me about 30 minutes to decide on what I was going to watch. I got up from the couch and walked to the kitchen and threw a pizza in the oven for dinner. I noticed my phone's battery was only at 10%, so I ran to my bedroom to grab my charger. When I got to my room, I heard this loud popping noise. At first, it scared the hell out of me, but then I sat there thinking maybe it was just my house settling. I've heard similar sounds before, but honestly not that loud. But then it happens again, and now I'm starting to feel uneasy. I tried to gather my thoughts and realized that the noise sounded distant and like it was coming from downstairs. And again, the cracking noise happened again. At this time, I'm completely freaked out, but then my eyes shot towards the basement's door, and I started to hear footsteps coming up the stairs from the basement. My heart's pounding and I'm frozen in fear. I know calling the cops should have been my first move, but my gut instinct was just to escape through the front door. I ran out to my neighbor's house and banged on their front door like a maniac. Luckily, they were home and let me in. At this time, I'm practically hyperventilating, trying to explain to them what's going down. They dial 911 and the cops show up in about 10 minutes. The police searched my entire house and didn't find anyone. But get this, they say whoever it was came in through my basement's entrance. Once my parents got there, my mom admitted to forgetting to lock the basement's exterior door. She just figured we were safe in our cozy little neighborhood. Lesson learned, I guess. I was 23 years old at the time and had just finished with college. I moved out of my dorms to a different old apartment off campus. When I say old, I mean it was built back during the 1920s. My apartment was in the old historic district side of town, but I was excited to be finally off on my own. Honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about paranormal stuff. You know, ghosts, demons, people crawling on the ceiling. But from time to time, things would happen that would make me question whether that stuff was real. For example, doors opening and shutting by themselves, weird noises, things like that. But I got home from work one day and saw a damp spot on my wall. It was small, maybe the size of a quarter. There wasn't any water pooling on the ground, and it just seemed like it was seeping through that one particular spot. I called my landlord about it and they said that they would send someone out eventually, but they couldn't give me a time or day they would be there. So that night I go to sleep, but I stay up all night tossing and turning having nightmares. I ended up going to work the next day extremely tired. Later that afternoon when I got home from work, the small wet spot on my wall that had started out the size of a quarter was now the size of a basketball. The wall itself felt spongy and soft in that area. I tried calling my landlord again to advise him that the water leak had gotten worse and they needed to send someone out immediately. But of course, they didn't answer. That evening, I go to bed again. Except this time at 3 a.m., I wake up to a loud crashing noise. I turned on my phone's flashlight to see what was going on. In the area where the leak had been, sections of plaster had been falling off the crumbling lath, and a small hole was now present. Initially, I was scared that I'd find black mold and get sick, but what I found was even worse. Inside the wall was a small room. It looked like a small closet, and someone way in the past had just closed it off permanently from the rest of my apartment. There was a large cast iron pipe in which the leak was coming from. But here's where it gets insane. Inside this room was a small metal cage that had been bolted to the wall. Inside the cage there were empty canned goods and trash, as if someone or something was being held captive. Completely horrified, I called the police, because at this point I didn't know who else to turn to. I waited outside my apartment until the police arrived. They went inside and started looking around. After about 30 minutes of investigating, they came back out and said that there wasn't much they could do. They said that no obvious laws had been broken. They agreed it was weird, but they also added that whatever reason the cage was built, and whoever built it was most likely long gone. I ended up calling a friend and going to their place to stay until I could find a new place to live. But still, I'm left wondering who or what they were keeping in that cage, and why it had been closed off for so many years, as if they were trying to hide it. Back when I was younger, my father got laid off from his job, and my family had to relocate once my father found work elsewhere. My parents decided to rent this house built back in the 40s. Things were cool at first, but then about 2 weeks after moving in, I began to sense something strange about my room. It's hard to put into words, but I just felt off. Honestly, uncomfortable. Around midnight, I woke up freezing cold, which was kind of weird because my room was on the second floor, which if you've ever lived on the second floor, it's always known to be warmer than the rest of the house. But I turned over in my bed to grab the extra blanket near my feet, but my eyes met this old skinny guy just standing there in the corner of my room, staring at me with these bloodshot eyes. I was totally shaken. I tried to muster up some words, anything at all, but nothing came out. The next thing I knew, the sun was up, and I was just lying there, completely bewildered, wondering what the hell just happened. That morning, I didn't breathe a word to my parents and mention anything about the man, because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. Anyways, the craziest part is that later that same day, our landlord stopped by to look at an issue with our kitchen's faucet. Then out of nowhere, he brings up how some guy died in the place. I'm sitting there terrified, thinking, was that the guy I saw last night? Eventually, time went on and my father got his old job back, and we moved out of that house. But till this day, the thought of that old sickly man in my room haunts my dreams. What do y'all think it was?